Krishna. We are conducting an interfaith panel, and it's my honor and my joy to welcome all the panelists. And we have a special guest, Kim Mabry from Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston. We are partnering with Interfaith Ministries to put on this panel discussion. And so Kim is going to introduce the panelists. I'm going to introduce Kim. So she has been with Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston for 3 years. She started working just before the pandemic shutdown happened. And before she was there, she served at the United Methodist Church in pastoral leadership at St. Paul's United Methodist Church for 9 years, and in extension ministry at Houston Methodist Hospital. She was the creator and lead project manager over the Faith Health Initiative for Houston Methodist Hospital and the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. And Ms. Mabry has a Master of Divinity from Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University and a Certificate of Clinical Education and Chaplaincy. And prior to her ministry, she was the owner of Impact Marketing and Design Company for 7 years. She earned a bachelor's degree in management from Texas A&M University, College Station. She and her husband, Mike, have been married for 29 years and have 2 boys, Miles and Braden. So thank you, Kim, for coming and starting our program. And before, I just wanted to mention, I think most of us know, why do we want an interfaith panel discussion on Sri Ramakrishna's birthday? Ramakrishna was a great prophet of harmony. And when we first think of his teachings, this always comes up as many faiths, so many paths, that different religions are not all wrong. They're all paths to God. The important thing, he would say, find God by whatever path you take. And so recognizing his emphasis on harmony, we have invited our friends from different religious traditions to come and we'll have a nice discussion together. Kim, please.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. As was noted, I'm here with Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston. And Swapni and I have been working diligently for about 3-4 weeks now, and we have been working hard. So thank you, Swapni, for inviting Interfaith Ministries to be a part of this. And I couldn't have done it without her, and I hope you would say likewise.
Exactly, absolutely.
So just a little bit about Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston. We have been in Houston for over 65 years, starting many years ago, originally as Metropolitan Ministries, which brought faith leaders together across traditions. You know the diversity of Houston, what we cherish and what makes us the most diverse city in the United States. And so without an organization like Interfaith Ministries to bring people from all corners of our wonderful city together, we would be so much more isolated. And we started this project of interfaith dialogue 65 years ago. That's why people look to Houston in learning how to do this well. So we started with that tradition of bringing people from across traditions together. Then over the years, we've brought 3 other areas into the fold of Interfaith Ministries, looking at what is it that are aspects of culture and theology that we can all agree on. Feeding the hungry, welcoming the stranger, and doing good deeds for others. So with that pattern or that understanding, we brought Meals on Wheels under the umbrella of Interfaith Ministries. We're the largest Meals on Wheels distributor in the state of Texas and the 5th largest in the United States. We have another facet of our organization called Refugee Services. We are one of 4 agencies in the city of Houston, Greater Houston, that actually resettles refugees. We work with the State Department and we get them signed up for all of the services that they would have towards and need towards their path towards citizenship. So Refugee Services, welcoming the stranger. And then another facet is what's called Volunteer Houston, which all of you are invited to go onto our website and you can register in the Volunteer Houston portal and register as an individual and say all the talents and skills and where you are geographically and saying you're willing to volunteer, and then it matches you with organizations across the city that need your skills, that need your geographic location. And so it's a way for you to do good deeds across the city. So those are the 4 areas of Interfaith Ministries. What started as Metropolitan Ministries is now our department under Interfaith Ministries, and our department is called Interfaith Relations and Community Partnerships. And what we do is dialogue, collaboration, and service, bringing people together in continued support of the greater Houston community like we are today. So I'm happy that some of the faith leaders I'm meeting for the first time, and some are old friends that I've known. So it is just wonderful. Again, this is what I love to do, and this is what is the most fun. Yes. All right. Is that better? Okay. Yes, testing. Testing. Is that better? So did anybody hear what I just said? Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, that's a lot of words that I've not heard. So that being said, I'm going to let my friends, some old and some new, introduce themselves on their own. And I'd like to start over here at the far wall with, I'm going to call you an old friend by now, Imam Haq. If you'd like to say just a few words about who you are and your tradition.
Well, my name is Muhammad Haq. And originally I'm from Pakistan, moved here a long time, like many years. And I'm an imam. I'm an imam in a mosque in Clear Lake area. And okay. I also teach religious studies in University of Houston and main campus. And I, being a teacher or student of the world religions, I am interested in working with King of the Interfaith Ministries and participating in the Interfaith dialogues. Thank you.
And Carrie?
So my name is Carrie DeLeon. I am a Christian United Methodist pastor. I have been a pastor for a little over 10 years. I was a second career pastor. I didn't go to seminary until I was in my 40s. I lead as the executive pastor, Klein United Methodist Church, which is in the Spring area on the northwest side of Houston. And Kim and I have known each other for a very long time because we went to seminary together.
Most of you know me. I'm Swami Mahayogananda. For those of you who, for whom the name might be a little bit difficult, it actually, if you break it down, it's very easy. It starts Maha Yoga Nanda. Maha Yoga Nanda. And all the monks in our tradition have this name that ends with Ananda, which means bliss. It means joy. So the idea is that our names are describing an aspect of the divine, which is joy. In my case, Maha, great, Yoga, union. So the bliss of the great union of the soul with the absolute. And Swami is a term for the monks. It means master. We're trying to attain mastery over our minds and our senses. So we get the name Swami. Though we haven't attained it yet, but we're trying. And I joined our monastic order in 1997 and was ordained as a Swami in 2007. Since then, serving in different places.
Wonderful, thank you. And your next door neighbors are friends from the Sikh tradition. And I just want to say that I have become a personal evangelist for the chai tea that you serve at Gurdwaras across the city. It's delicious. But our Sikh friends.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello. Hello. Hi. Hello, everyone. Namaskar. Just like Swamiji said, there's one goal and there are many paths. We happen to be the next door neighbor, which is also one of the alternate paths. And we've been here since 2016, and it's such a pleasure to be here today and see every one of you. My name is Dipesh, and I'm speaking on behalf of Akal Singh Ji, who's also my father-in-law, and he's also the priest there at the Gurdwara. And he's been a priest since 1979, and been on this path ever since. So today we are here to shed some light on Sikhism, and glad to be here. Thank you very much.
So our first question, it's always interesting how faith leaders, the path that brought them to leadership and their perspective faith tradition. Carrie, you already kind of mentioned a little bit about how you didn't become a faith leader till your 40s. So I'm going to let Carrie start, since you already gave us a teaser, and then I'll let the others follow suit with what led you to leadership in your tradition.
Well, it was a calling into ministry that I received in my early 40s. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a form of cancer, when I was 39, and did 6 months of chemotherapy plus several years of follow-up treatment. And it was during that time that I began to do a much better job of not just praying, but listening. And when I began to listen, I would say God began to speak. And in that process, I began to realize that God was calling me into ordained ministry. I thought that for a while until I finally realized or came to the conclusion that if God called me to it, God would equip me for it, and it would be all right in the end. So I went to seminary as a second career person, going part-time. It took me 5 years to get through. When I left seminary, I went as an intern into Klein United Methodist Church, and from there became the general flunky, and then associate pastor, and now executive pastor. I've just kind of moved the way up at that church. So that's my basic story.
Wonderful.
Who'd like to share next? Why don't we have one of our Eastern tradition leaders?
So he comes from a family of kirtan, which is singing hymns on the path. And because Sikhism is all, there's no living guru in Sikhism, so they follow a book which is called the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and it has kitne shabad hai total? So there are 5,980 shabads in total in the book. And each one of them is written in its own mode, or a musical mode, or a musical raga, having its own rhythm or a tempo. So which is performed on every service, every Sunday and every Friday. So he comes from a family. They did that since his grandfather, then his father, then he was born in that same family, and they would sing the hymns. So that is how he was raised. And after coming to the US, he had an opportunity to do other jobs and to attend to all the family needs and everything. But then initially he decided that eventually he decided that this is not what he was born to do, and he continued with the Kirtan tradition. Then he started with working at the Gurdwara, local Gurdwara. Then he was invited to perform at other Gurdwaras, and that is how he's been doing that for so many years. So that is how he started, and he's still on the path. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So they're called Ragis.
Ragi?
Ragi.
Yes. Ragi. Ah.
So what age were you when you first started that path?
क्या उम्र से आपने कीर्तन करना स्टार्ट किया? तबला बजाना?
38, 29.
Yeah, he was 29 years old when he started actually performing with his father. And he used to sing before when he started. And then he eventually, for some reason, for the medical problem, he lost his voice. Then he learned the tabla, because he thought that he had to do this. He had to do the kirtan. So he learned the tabla, he worked hard, and finally started performing tabla on stage. And then other singers started calling him to play with them, and then started a whole line of career just devoted to Sikhism and God.
Wonderful. Thank you. Imam Haq?
Well, thank you. Talking about the Muslim tradition, as probably many of you, most of you I see from South Asia, so we all know each other. In the religion of Islam, there is no priesthood. Like, it doesn't have to be somebody specially ordained, and only that person can lead the prayer. Any person who has a good knowledge of the religion of Islam and who understands some of the basic principles can lead the prayer, can give the sermon. Initially, I was invited in Houston by the Islamic Society of Greater Houston back in 1993 from Pakistan I was teaching in the university over there, Islamic Studies. So I was invited as an instructor in Islamic Studies for some of the schools and the classes that were arranged over here. And since being aware of some of the Islamic principles, and since I memorized the whole Quran in my childhood, as it's a very common tradition in the Muslim society, and besides teaching, I was given the responsibility of leading the prayer in one of the mosques. So that's how I eventually, but I'm carrying on both the work, being an imam also in a mosque, and at the same time teaching. I've been teaching in different places, but right now I'm teaching in the University of Houston. There is in the main campus of the University of Houston, many people don't know, there is a small department which is called Comparative Cultural Studies Department. And that department has one section which is called Religious Studies. And we have only about 12 faculty members over there. And I'm one of them mainly. And one of the interesting courses that I teach over there is called Christian-Muslim Relations. So we track the history of Christian-Muslim relations, cooperation and confrontation, or whatever happened throughout the history. And that's a very popular course. Many students come and they participate in that. And besides that, I teach Introduction to Islam, it's an undergraduate course. So that's my short story.
Thank you.
What does imam mean?
Imam means leader. And there are two kinds of imams in the religion of Islamic traditions. One is called the local leader, like the one who leads the prayer. And the national leader, or the one who is leading a nation or a community, is also called imam.
I have a follow-up question to that, because sometimes when I'm working with leaders from the Muslim tradition around Houston, they'll go by Sikh instead of, or Sheikh.
Sheikh.
Yes. Is there a difference meaning in those two?
As I mentioned to you, there is no priesthood.
Okay.
So any person who is knowledgeable, respected, can lead the prayer. And there are different words for that. In the Arab world, the Middle Eastern area, most common word which is used for the religious leaders is sheikh.
Sheikh.
In the South Asian community, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the title which is mostly known is Maulana. But over here in America, Imam is something which is mostly known that they are leading the prayer, or they are the one who is giving sermon on the Friday. So that's how over here in the West, mostly the word Imam is more like a formal, but the Sheikh is also anybody who is knowledgeable is a Sheikh. Literally, the word Sheikh is coming from Arabic language, which means older person. So that's because the older person is given respect. So a knowledgeable person is also given. So that's why everybody is called Sheikh.
That reminds me of in the Christian tradition, some will be called reverend, and then sometimes you'll hear the term pastor.
Right.
And so it's similar. Usually pastor you hear much more in the African American churches, and sometimes it means someone maybe who leads a congregation but doesn't necessarily have the formal theological training, where reverend refers to people who have gone through the ordination process. But again, there's not any kind of rule book about it. It's very interchangeable culturally. Would you agree with that, Carrie?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it keeps on changing with different references.
Wonderful. And now let's hear about your journey.
Well, first of all, your question, what called you to be a faith leader? First of all, I don't consider myself to be a faith leader. It may seem funny because here I am, as it were, leading the congregation or something, but I was called to be a monk. And it's a path of seeking God, the path of seeking for spiritual illumination. And that's how I ended up here. Because we monks, after we've been monks for a while, then we're told, okay, now you go and start giving some talks. Go talk to people about Vedanta. Well, I don't know what to say. It doesn't matter. You just share what you know. Okay, so I started giving talks, and I love performing our worship ritual. I learned it in our monastery, where it's just maybe one or two monks attending the service, and it's very much a ritual of devotion, and also it's deeply philosophical, where we understand that actually God is within. And so when we have pictures here on the altar, I know that some religious traditions find that difficult to understand. We know that the divine is within us, and we bring the divine out from within in order to lay our offerings in front of the altar. But we know that actually God is not in the altar only. God, we especially say, God, be here in the altar so that I can lay the flowers in front of you and express my devotion in that way, knowing all the while that this is where the divine resides. So those kind of things. So now I am here functioning maybe sort of as a faith leader, but I feel myself always to be a seeker. And when I share things, I'm sharing things with fellow seekers, because all the people who come here, they're also seekers. They're also seeking God. So that's how I envision it.
So let me word the question differently. How did you begin on your more ambitious path towards seeking God? That brings you to this place, this seat before us.
That's the great blessing of my life, to feel longing for God. And I think anyone who longs for God is blessed, because that sets us on the path to finding our destiny, actually. So I felt a longing for God, and I was actually exploring different religions. I hadn't committed to one, and I explored Zen Buddhism and Vedanta and Sufism, Islamic Sufism. And so I studied quite a bit in all three traditions, and then I was really stuck, because they're all amazing traditions. They're all powerful traditions, and I knew I had to choose one. Right. And then the circumstances of my life so evolved that I found myself staying in a little ashrama in San Francisco, which was dedicated to this path with Ramakrishna, and it was good. And we had our daily meditation, we had worship services, and suddenly it wasn't enough. I needed more. And so the next step was naturally to join the monastery. So it wasn't difficult for me. It's always a calling. It's not like a decision. So thank you.
So, the topic, or the title of this evening, if you will, is Finding Peace Through Spiritual Practice, Explorations Across Traditions. So I want to invite you to kind of talk, ask each other questions, and we'll get to a point where everyone in the audience can ask questions too. But I would like to hear what kind of spiritual traditions are common across your traditions. What spiritual practices would one find that, some of them we share, right? Like prayer. But then there are some that we have that are in particular, like maybe yoga. But if you could kind of talk about what are the spiritual practices that bring people towards peace, bring them closer to God, that are most common that you would find across your traditions. And any of you can start.
When I read the email, it said something about what in your faith brings peace. And I thought, that wasn't quite what we were talking about before. What in the faith? And then I realized that actually the very term faith is something that brings peace. And we have a word for it in Vedanta. It's called Shraddha. Maybe that doesn't probably mean much to you, but it means more than just believing something. It means our whole life turns to God. Or that yes, we have faith that God exists, and yes, we try to order our lives such that everything we do is connected with that faith, with that belief, which ripens into a conviction that we have that yes, not only is God real, but I also am a soul, not a body, and my soul is of the nature of peace and joy and bliss and love, and I try to manifest it. And so that, in a way, that faith itself brings peace, because when we don't feel peaceful, it's because we're afraid, or we don't know what's going to happen. And faith brings that surrender and that conviction that, yes, no matter what happens, I am an immortal soul, and God is my eternal companion.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is something difficult when you leave on us.
Right.
So, since I have been in a teaching career, so it's a very popular incident and popular in our academic tradition that one teacher on a final exam asked the class, make 3 questions yourself and write the answer. And none of them could do anything. After 30 minutes, they all said, we can't do anything, just give us questions. So
That is great.
But talking about how we get peace in the Islamic traditions, what we believe, I mean, other people or media maybe believe it different, but we as Muslims, what we believe that the word Islam means peace. And it's coming from the Arabic word, which is salam. And it's very similar to the the Hebrew word shalom, which also means peace. And basically, in the religion of Islam, you need 2 pieces, and then you are good. If you have these 2 pieces in your life, you are successful. One is peace with your Creator, that you have good relations with your Creator, with God. He is happy with you, you are happy, pleased. And the second piece is with your fellow human beings and those that they are around you. If you have these 2 pieces, then you are a good Muslim. And in order to achieve these 2 kinds of pieces, there are certain obligatory practices, which is spiritual and physical, that every Muslim has to do in order to achieve these 2 pieces. So, for example, 5 times daily prayers. So 5 times daily prayers is basically, if you study in depth the Quranic verses and the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad about these 5 daily prayers, this is basically a meditation in God. And when you are praying, you are not supposed to talk, look around, and because you are not there, you are in God. You are absorbed in Allah. And then you have to do some practices like postures, which makes it more similar to yoga. Mm-hmm. And then spiritually, you are praising God, appreciating His blessings. And before that, you start the prayer, you wash yourself, you make wudu. So if you ever visited a mosque or a worship place in the world of Islam, there is a huge arrangement of washing before you enter, because everybody have to wash. The parts of the body that they are mostly uncovered and not under the dress, and they are getting dusty particles and other things. So you are washing those arms, wiping the head, hands, face, feet. And if you make this experiment that after a long day, you come home and you wash these parts, and especially your feet, taking off your shoes and socks, you're going to feel relaxed.
Right.
And in that relaxed form, you go and do meditation, do prayers. So that brings you peace with God. Yourself, you feel peaceful. And when you are peaceful, you are not stressed out. You will have better peace relations with others. So that's one, that's prayer. But I don't want to take more time. But there are other, like charities, zakat, fasting, those things also on the same, have the same impact on you and your environment.
Thank you. I hope you can kind of speak to those as we get more in conversation. How about in the Sikh tradition, what are some of the spiritual practices that we would see?
So at this point, I really wish you could speak English because they're such great speakers, and I'm falling short of words. So what I can
ਅਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਹਾਂ, ਕੋਈ ਫਿਕਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰੋ.
okay. So in the Sikh tradition, when you talk about peace, there are several routes to that, and you could do all of them, or you could do each one of them, whatever you feel like, however you relate to it. But they all kind of direct and reach the same destination, which is attaining inner peace. One of the most commonly suggested and to everyone on the path is to be content and be happy and be thankful to Lord for whatever that He has given, instead of counting everything that He hasn't given or what the other has. So contentment is really the primemost. But just be thankful for everything that you have. They say that, I was reminded of a speaker in India, and he said that if you have a bed, a pillow to put your head on, when you turn the tap or the faucet and you have running water, when you have roof over your head and a morsel of food to eat, there's nothing more that you could ask for. Everything else is luxury. Everything else is what you envision for yourself. Otherwise, Lord has given everything. So contentment is one of the primemost. Second is seva, is to serve the society, serve everyone around you. They say even if you attach your personal desires to anything that you do, that's not seva. It's a deal. But if you do something without expecting anything in return, is actually nishkam seva. It's something that you are not attaching anything to that in return. So that is the second, and which is usually done in the Gurdwara every Friday and Sunday, where a whole lot of people from various sections of the society, various professions, they just come and they sweep the floors, they clean the Gurdwara, they cook food. And serving food is also one of the sevas, which is free food for all sections of the society. They sit down on the floor and they all eat together. Then again, which I feel should be the primemost, is suggesting, or rather advising people, is Nam Japna, is to meditate. Where you just, by meditating also is a sort of seva, it's a sort of service. And it's like saying thanks to God and giving some time from your busy schedule of the day in 24 hours. You're giving some time to Lord, just to thank Him, just to tell Him that I miss you. You're always in my mind. I am thinking about you as much as I think about my daughter or my wife or my parents. I love you. It's a way of saying I love you to Lord. So Nam Japna is also another thing. And Band Chakna is also one of the values where kids are taught to share, which is, and you share with the needy. They say if you have roti is like a flatbread that we have, and they say if you have two, and if you could do with one, give the other one to someone who's actually needy. So these are some of the ways where everyone has his own approach of doing these and practicing it.
Yeah, and so all of this sounds very familiar with some of the Christian traditions that we have. For my particular denomination, we speak a lot about the means of grace, the grace that we receive from God that's unmerited, that we don't earn. And we some of the practices that usher in that grace are attending worship, reading scripture, prayer, doing acts of service or good works. So all of that's very familiar to what I'm hearing. It is not probably as structured as yours, although I really like that idea of washing feet to get, there's almost like a stepping into the attitude of prayer that's really kind of nice. I like that. But I think the whole idea is having that communion with God and recognizing that when I'm on my own and in my own thoughts, I am the only important thing in the whole world to me. But we have to step outside of that, and it's connecting with God through those means of grace that helps us to see that we are not on our own. We're connected in a much larger connected web with everyone around us. So in the Bible, Jesus told us to love God and love others. And that's exactly what everyone here is talking about, that the attitude of stepping into the love of God and then stepping into love of others. And when you do that, you really do receive so much more. You enter into this idea of gratitude that makes you realize how truly fortunate and blessed we all really are.
Thank you. And Swami, what would you say?
You know, there was I was trying to just remember, I saw on my morning walk in the hills of Hollywood, there was this signboard that someone had put up, and I'll see if I can remember it. It says, "If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace in the homes. If there's to be peace in the homes, there must be peace in the heart." And it's a kind of a universal peace message. We see so much lack of peace in the world, and so many efforts to bring about peace by imposing it. You are going to stop fighting. But until the most important, that's also important, to work among people who are fighting and misunderstanding. But the peacemakers themselves, they've got to have peace within. And how to get that peace, I think that's what we've been talking about. Our Vedanta tradition has really, what I love about Vedanta is how it brings all our faculties into play. We have what we call 4 different kinds of approaches to spiritual life, and we want to bring them all in. We have and we call them yogas, different yogas or different paths of union. The yoga of wisdom, where we understand, we think about who we really are, we think about how we're connected, we read the scriptures, we start to deeply reflect on the teachings of the scriptures and the sages, and start to try to live according to those teachings. That would be called the yoga of wisdom, employing our intellect. And then we also have the yoga of devotion, where we try to love God. And we have so many practices for that, like meditation, though that's a separate path in itself, but repeating the holy name of God, which is common, I know, to your tradition, and actually common to all of our traditions, repeating the name of God. And we have singing of hymns, laying of flowers before the altar, this kind of worship, reading devotional texts. That's appealing to our emotional side. And then we have a separate yoga dedicated to meditation, the royal road to the divine, where we learn techniques. There are techniques which we can learn of calming the mind, sitting in a still, calming the mind, withdrawing from the external world, taking the help perhaps of a sacred formula called a mantra, which we have been taught, and repeating that. And gradually we start to over time, it's difficult, but over time we make progress in meditation. We start to touch peace in our meditation. And then we also have this active side. We have to, everyone's doing all the time. We can't live for a minute without doing something. So how do we turn that also into a path to God? Well, that's the yoga of work, where we bring all our activities and either we do them relinquishing the fruits, we let go, we do them just to do the work. That's a little more philosophical attitude. Or we do everything as a devotional offering. We are doing something simply for God, not for, we think we're doing it for ourselves, right? Try to do it instead as service, everything as service. So that's, I think, when we see suffering in the world and we can do a little bit to alleviate some of that suffering, even if we can offer a kind word to the lady in the supermarket line who's looks upset, and we offer a kind word or a smile and she looks a little bit happier, even that is a service. That brings tremendous peace too. So all of these four brought together are part of this project of finding inner peace and letting that peace shine out.
Thank you. Did anyone want to add to anything? I'd like to ask our audience for questions. There's all these beautiful faces and minds out there, and I know that there are questions that you have that I couldn't even imagine. So do we have someone to moderate, to have a microphone and bring it to our guests? All right. Just raise your hand if you have a question.
With reverence, I want to say something. Thank you all for being here. We are enlightened with the knowledge. I don't see a person who is a follower of Buddha here. I was wondering.
We tried. We went all the way to Thailand. We really did.
Yeah, we are very sorry that we tried to get a Buddhist leader and a Jewish leader. Unfortunately, for both of those, we were unfortunately we couldn't get them. So we hope the next time around, we will work around that and get you two leaders of the two faiths as well.
Thank you, thank you.
One of the difficulties is that Fridays you won't get a Muslim, Saturdays you won't get a Jew, Sundays you won't get a Christian. So those
Today is Saturday.
those are certain difficulties.
We had one rabbi who was willing to brave Shabbat, but he had a wedding that started at 4. So
Anyway, I just was wondering, no problem. And so thankful that we could hear so much. I came late. I feel so sorry about that, stuck in the traffic. Anyway, because the person who is speaking about Jesus and the Christianity sounded like we don't care only for ourselves. We are putting out ourselves for the world. This is the thing that misled me in the beginning, that when I went to practice the Buddha technique, I just learned techniques. I'm not religious. When I went there, they told us to feel the inside of our body because it's made up of all atoms and nothing is eternal. So you go feel inside, they said. When I thought the same way like a Christian would think. Why do I have to think of my body? Why do I have to survey my body? Am I selfish? That was my first thought. But when the days went by, when I started feeling that inner self, I started feeling that I am that creator energy, like Advait, the Vedantis think. It is in all of the areas of my body. So I'm just trying to feel it, being that inner self. So that doesn't mean that I'm selfish, I'm egoistic, thinking only about myself. That came to me later, after I started feeling inside, all of those sensations of the insides, and starting to accept good and bad as the same. The secret of happiness, Buddha said, is not reacting to it, not processing whatever comes to you. You have all of these things, good, bad, all the time happening. when we don't react to all of that and being in that centered righteousness, not reacting, not seeing as happiness or sadness, and I'm not the body, I'm not this thought, I'm not the mind, then I am that, one with it. That is the principle I learned after a long practice. So just I wanted to share this. Other things are all same, like we heard about washing ourselves, bodily cleansing before we go in there and do all kinds of things. Whatever we do, in all religions we practice that, seems like, right? Focused. Thank you.
Would you like to respond? Sure. I mean, I think it's really a both and. We are working on our inner spiritual life, trying to connect with the divine within us. I mean, I believe, probably all of us believe that the divine lives within us, and we need to connect with that and learn how to be at peace or at one with the divine that lives within us. But one of the ways that we do that is to reach out to people who are around us and to see that they also have God in them as well. And I think one of the things that's particular, and I think probably that my comment comes from my particular context, living in the suburbs with relatively affluent people who think that working 24/7, never stopping and buying everything that they can buy is going to find them some kind of happiness, and it is not. So it's stepping out of that and outside of ourselves that helps us to better connect with the divine within ourselves.
What do you think about, it seems to me like there is a certain tension in my tradition and probably maybe in your traditions too, between the mystical side where I'm communing with God alone, actually. It's a solitary, when I'm meditating, I meditate alone. I might be meditating in a room with 50 people, but I'm still meditating alone. And it's a solitary pursuit with, on the other hand, the idea of community and the importance of spiritual community, which I think might be stronger in some of the other traditions represented here, the Sikh community, the Christian community, and the Muslim community, the Ummah, and how Muslims pray, when they pray together, you pray with your shoulders touching, no? That's so beautiful. We don't do that. We meditate alone. So there's a certain tension, on the one hand, the importance of community for peace, for feeling peace, and on the other hand, this longing of the alone for the alone, the flight of the alone to the alone.
Well, there is, in the Muslim prayer, as you said, they stand shoulder to shoulder next to each other. And what is prayed, every time you pray, is the first chapter of the Quran, Fatiha. In that chapter, there is one sentence which is a prayer that every time we pray, we must repeat it. So every Muslim is a practicing Muslim repeats that prayer about 32 times a day. And the words of the prayer is in plural, not in singular. So it's asking, oh God, guide all of us. So that is what the individual spirituality is getting into the communal spirituality.
There's also a tradition, though, of mystics, individual mystics, maybe, who wanted to, who repeated the tasbih alone and then that kind of thing.
Well, it has been discouraged by the Prophet Muhammad that you don't try to do it. Take yourself only to the heavens, but you need to be very concerned about the others. And I don't know, you have been studying the Sufism, so you know that there is an incident in the life of the Prophet Muhammad that he went all the way up to the heavens, close to God. And the Quran says he was only at a distance from God, distance of 2 bows, like the arrow and bow. So at the distance of 2 bows. But that is what is the ultimate, I think, in every religion, that everybody wants to be with God, right? But Prophet Muhammad went to that close, but then he came back to take the other people with him. if anybody else would have been, nobody would like to leave God when he's so close.
Yes,
But for the sake of the rest of the world, he came back.
Beautiful.
So that is what is the importance of the community
Yes, yes,
and everybody around us.
yes. You know, we have a story in our tradition of told by Sri Ramakrishna of three friends. They were walking and they came to some kind of garden enclosed by a very high wall, and they couldn't see what's inside. And so, but they could hear some music, something. And so with great effort, one of them climbed to the top, and with a shout of joy, he jumped into the garden. So the other two friends were like, what's on the other side? So the next friend, he climbed up there, and he also, seeing the mart of joy inside, he also gave a great shout and he jumped in. And so the third friend, he knew he had to get up on that wall. And so he climbed up. And when he climbed up, he also thought his first impulse was just to jump in and enjoy. And then he thought, oh, wait, what about all the other people? They also should know about this wonderful thing. And so he climbed back down and went to call other people to the thing. So that's a similar, very similar story. Yeah. Of course, ours is just a story, whereas yours is like a historical incident. But the idea is that the great spiritual teachers, they don't just merge in God. They come back and say, hey, you all come with me.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Namaste. My name is Vani Rao. I'm so grateful to see faiths sitting together having a conversation. So, there are two mindsets that we often talk about a lot in business, about abundance versus scarcity. And I wonder, when we're talking about our various faiths, how it is that in a room full of converts, it's easy for all of us to say we can all ascend, all of us, whatever path. How is it that each one of our faiths is showing signs of a scarcity mindset where we think we have to convince others of our way through fundamentalist beliefs or practices? And what can we do at a practical level to move towards abundance? Easy question.
Can you elaborate just a little, this scarcity versus abundance?
So scarcity is the idea that for me to succeed, someone has to fail. So a lot of people will call that a zero sum. Some will win and some will lose. Abundance means that we can all ascend together, that we can actually all rise, and that there is no fixed pie, there's actually just an expanding pie. So I can be a faithful Muslim, I can be a faithful Christian, a faithful Hindu, or a faithful Sikh, and all of us can go up to whatever we consider our higher power. The scarcity part is where we think, I can only do it my way, and your way is wrong. Does that make sense?
Who would like to address that?
I'll just say something about that. In the Sikh tradition, the first Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he actually traveled the world because he believed that it's for. Sorry. So the first Guru, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, he traveled the world because yeah. So they were called Char Udasis, which are 4 journeys that he did all around the world. He traveled some 28,000 kilometers or miles walking, and he just had this one message of God, that God is within you. And in one of the Shabads, he also says that it's only when it's only when it's His will is when you would come to a point where you would meet a teacher who would put you on that path. For example, the way I perceive it is that we are all sitting in this room. There is a will somewhere. Why is it that only we are here and there's so many around who are actually in movie theaters right now, or malls, or in parks. How come we are all here? And it's what he says is that it's will, and God is already there. He said that God created the world and decided to be there, be a part of it. So he's in the trees, he's in all living beings. It's all about realization. So it's only when he wants, you come and touch with the teacher, and then you're put on the path, you practice it. And then again, if it's his will, you will actually move and progress on that path and finally attain moksha or nirvana. So I think when it comes to abundance, in a way, there is abundance because it's for everyone. It's in everyone's. It's within everyone. But then there's a scarcity, which is created by the lifestyle, or the lives that we are living, or the mindsets, or distractions of society. Where when you're not thinking about liberation, and you're only thinking about practicing a religion, I think that is where the fine line is, where you're actually so confined to the rules rather than moving or progressing towards the fruits of it. The nirvana, actually, the bliss, or the paramanand. I think that is where it is. So in a way, there is abundance, but there's also scarcity. The scarcity is from our side. It's not from his side. Is what I want to say.
Right.
Yeah.
That comes from.
I agree. Yeah.
God's will.
Right. Exactly.
He would probably, or she would probably.
Correct. Yeah.
But that comes from God's will.
Yep. Lovely. Yeah.
And I just wanted for one more thing.
I want to say something pleasant also. We have our brother, our 6 friends. When we were building this place, they were so extremely friendly, helpful to us. And every time we had Sri Ramakrishna's birthday or any special day, they would bring a whole big bowl of prasad for us that day. And kirtans we would go attend. Beautiful ragis, you're all singing so beautifully, and such beautiful songs. All the shabads are so great. And that keeps us together. The other great thing I always admired about Sikh religion is langar. The communally sitting together and eating. And most of the time, Hinduism, of course, does have the caste system too. We do practice caste system. But in the Sikh religion, I found each one of us is treated like an equal. So that makes it really beautiful. We are together. We are a communal group.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that.
I want to give our panelists a chance to respond to the question about scarcity versus abundance. I can tell all 3 of you were kind of like, you're waiting to go.
Leaning in. I would say that the Christian faith has an issue with the idea of scarcity, especially among different denominations. We're very split up in all these different denominations, and some are more scarcity minded than others are. But there are some Christian faiths that are very much scarcity minded, that you must believe the way I believe, in the specific tradition that I have, in the specific denomination I have. There are actually Christian denominations who believe only that particular Christian denomination are going to ascend, are going to heaven. And yes, I think that's an issue. For me personally, and my denomination talks about grace over and over, the unmerited, unearned grace of God that we all receive. So yes, we're living in that tension as Christians between very much an abundance versus scarcity mindset within denominational differences, but also within particular denominations. We're still struggling with that issue. And I'll tell you, I grew up in a very fundamentalist church. My uncle was the preacher, and I can remember arguing with him when I was like 10, 12 years old. I argued theology with him all the time. And one of the things I argued with him was, do you really believe that someone brought up in a Muslim family on the other side of the world, brought up in a Muslim family in a Muslim country that is faithfully following this Muslim tradition, do you really believe that person's going to hell? Which he did. And I looked at him and said, that makes no sense to me. The love of God is bigger than that. There is no way that God's condemning somebody for doing the exact same thing I'm doing, brought up in a Christian family in a Christian country and practicing my Christian faith. Like that, it never logically made sense to me. But
Amen.
we do still have that tension within our faith.
Amen.
Carrie, for the sake of our audience, can you explain what grace is?
Grace is, gosh, Kim.
It was only like a whole class. But I realized in my job, some of this language that we're used to.
Yes.
I had a Jewish person ask me the other day, what does the word ministry mean? Y'all use that all the time. So I think grace might be something that gets lost in translation.
So grace is this favor that we receive from God, this gift of life and love and provision. All of that we receive without ever having to earn it. We believe that God is working in grace, through grace, in our lives long before we even know who God is. Before we have made a step at all, God is working within us and around us to bring us to knowledge of God. So that is that grace working in our lives. Is that
like divine love?
Divine love. Yeah.
And Mom?
Yes.
Or either way.
Well, this is
Yes.
maybe.
Can I
Yes.
respond to the question of grace and how it is in Sanskrit?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh.
You want? Let's have them answer it first, and then we'll. Okay. Yes.
Well, it's a very interesting question, but it's maybe more popular in the business, not in the religion. That you fail, I become successful.
Right.
In religion, and particularly talking about the religion of Islam, you must have heard the very popular Quranic verse, which says there is no compulsion in religion. And there is a verse in the Quran, not one, many times, that if Allah wanted, He could have made all the human beings on one religion. So, but He did not want it. So, what the Quran says is that everything is very clear this is from God, and everybody has a choice to go this way or that way. But the Quran is explaining the consequences. So everybody is responsible themselves. Now, what Muslims have been encouraged in the Quran is that you make sure you have good relations, no matter what the religion is. And one verse says that do not say bad word to the God of any other religion. And this is a very clear verse in the Quran. وَلَا تَسُبُّ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مَعَ اللَّهِ. Those that in Islam, the emphasis is on one God. But if in the other religions there are many gods, do not even mention them with a bad word, because this will jeopardize your relationship. And that's what is more important. That you may be belonging to the different faiths, but after all, you are human beings and you have to take care of each other. And we have many examples like that, that Prophet Muhammad, and it's a very popular story in Sahih Bukhari, which is a very authentic, the most authentic book of the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. That Prophet Muhammad was sitting and a funeral was passing by. And he stood up for the respect. And then his companions told him that it was a funeral of a Jewish person. So he stood up. He said, is he not a human? So this is the spirit that the religion teaches. And of course, this is not business that there's a limited spot in the heaven and I need to go for it, and otherwise I will not get it.
Swami, did you want to comment?
Well, just that what we are doing today is one way to just getting to know each other and discovering that, oh my goodness, Muslims and Christians and Sikhs, they're human beings just like me. And this, so interfaith interaction is important. Getting to know people who look different from us, who think differently from us, and starting to find that, well, actually, there's not that much difference. We're similar in so many ways. Our blood is the same red color. We have the same desire inside for peace and love and security and justice, all these similar desires. Okay, so we disagree a little bit about what the proper name of God is. Well, so what? But we have to get to know each other in order for that to happen. I was reminded of a story that one of our members told me. He was a young man, a Christian fundamentalist, who believed that only Christians were going to heaven and everybody else going to hell. Right. And he went on a trip, maybe it was a mission, I don't know. He went to Turkey, and he saw all these beautiful young Turkish children playing in the street. And something opened up inside him, and he realized, how could God, who I think of as being love, how could he send these beautiful children to hell just because they don't worship Jesus? That doesn't make sense. And so he broke out of that narrow-mindedness. So that was a working of grace right there.
Right. Yes, it was.
But so in one sense we need grace, but I think we need this kind of, and I would say our faith leaders who, oftentimes it's the faith leaders who get in the interfaith work, if they can bring a little bit of that in their interactions with their congregations, with their community, and just slip it in gently. If it's a little bit of a conservative group, you slip it in gently, but just slip in something like, I was at an interfaith meeting at the Hindu temple the other day, just start slipping it in, hint, hint.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have another question?
Just following up on the question, and there are two things, and I kind of engage at a temple here, and I'm very involved here. There are two areas when you are speaking to the congregation, and many of you made this point, which needs to be clarified when we are talking about God. I think that would help. All of you have spoken so eloquently. One is the love for God. You said two things. One is we should have love for God and love for fellow human being. Now, in almost all our scriptures, when we use the word God, it uses that religion's, like Swamiji, you were saying, that religion's word for God. So people with closeted mind would interpret that the love has to be for that form of God and not this. So when you are preaching, if that comes out, like you said, slip it in, that this is God, the whole God, and not just one God, maybe that is helpful. And the second thing is love for fellow human being. All of you have eloquently spoken, fellow human being. Again, when people interpret fellow human being, they interpret as, hey, you have to, fellow human beings who believe in that one God like you are only, love them. The others you may have to convert. So when you speak to the wider conversations, those two clarifications, that any God and any human being, would be very helpful. This is just from layman perspective. I want to hear, your feedback. How can, this continue in your speeches and in your lectures? Thank you so much. Thanks for having this. Bye.
Was there any response that you wanted to give?
Thank you for your support.
Do we have another question?
I think he's next.
Wait, we have one person.
Oh, and then we also have the comment on grace, and then Tom Maz also.
Just quick.
We are familiar with, many of you are here who are familiar with the word adrishtam. The word adrishtam is more of a Sanskrit word, which means drishtam means something which can be seen. When you prefix the word drishtam with an a, it means the opposite of that word. Okay? So something which cannot be seen, or where you do not know the source where it's coming from, or how it is coming. That's how grace is interpreted here in through this one word of adrishtam. That's what I wanted to share.
Wonderful presentation by everybody, very enlightening. Um, 2 or 3 points I want to make. When you have a chance, Imam, if you could explain the word jihad. I think it's very grossly misunderstood. And for Swamiji, the name that you have, is that something that you adopted yourself, or was it given to you by the order? And the third point I wanted to make was, Swamiji, you mentioned so nicely about if there has to be peace in the world, nations, cities, homes, and heart. Years ago, I had somebody who was literally begging me to make a donation because he wanted to go on a mission overseas, a Christian missionary. And I didn't want to give him the money. And then I don't know if I was a little rude to him, but I told him, I said, have you gone to the inner cities within the United States? Why do you have to spend all your time and energy and effort going all the way where somebody may not have heard the word of Jesus? How many people do you know within the United States that have actually heard the word Jesus? So.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a very interesting question, because jihad is the one of, I think it's the only Islamic institution which is mostly misunderstood. And because of different Islams, there is one Islam that general Muslims believe in, and there is another Islam that the Hollywood is preaching. And there is another Islam that the media is portraying. So when it comes to jihad, when I say the word jihad, I want to ask questions. What is the immediate thing or the meaning comes in your mind?
Harris.
I would say the meaning, but I think the connotation which I get, it's not a positive connotation.
Like fighting.
Right.
Fighting. That comes in, right?
Right.
Or war. And that's not what it means. The word for war in the Quran, or for war or for fighting, is qital or harb. And the word holy war is not an Islamic term. It's coming even before Islam from Christian tradition. And what is the word jihad? Jihad is an Islamic institution which literally means struggle or hard work. So a Muslim has to be active in his or her lifestyle. And the opposite of jihad, if you study the Quran or Arabic, you know what is the opposite of jihad? Is laziness. So there are two words mentioned in the Quran: mujahid, the one who does jihad, and qa'id, the one who is sitting idly, lazily, is not doing her tasks, is always behind. So this is initially started in Mecca. Prophet Muhammad has two parts of his prophetic life, Meccan and Medina. So in Mecca, Muslims were an oppressed minority. In Medina, they started fighting back. So all the fighting verses were revealed in Medina. But jihad verses are Meccan. There was no fighting, but there was a struggle going on. So you have to make struggle. So one time, a woman came to the Prophet and she said, I want to go for jihad. And he said, go for Hajj, the pilgrimage, because that is a jihad for you, that's where you go. And I have been to Hajj many times, to Mecca for the pilgrimage. And if you meet anybody who has been there, at least it goes on for about 5 days every year. And one day you have to walk for at least 7 miles. So if you're not used to walking, you are in big trouble, unless you are in a wheelchair. So every person who is going for the pilgrimage, we advise him, start walking at least 2-3 months before, 2 miles every day, so that you can get over there. So that is the literal meaning of the word jihad. Now there are kinds of jihad. That what kind of struggle you are doing. There is verbal jihad, like what I am doing right now. I'm struggling or working for a cause, and that is verbally. Then there is monetary jihad. You are spending money for a cause. Then there is jihad with pen. You are struggling with your pen, with your writing skills. And if generally you see that one aspect of the jihad comes when you are fighting against the enemy. And when you are fighting against the enemy, the Prophet said, you have 3 enemies, 2 within and 1 outside. And 2 within is your own self, your evil desires. And the Prophet said that this is the biggest struggle, the biggest jihad you are doing is against your own evil desires. If you can tame yourself and discipline yourself, that is the biggest jihad. And then the second enemy is the shaitan, the devil, that is persuading you to do all the bad things. And if you can handle that, then that is another jihad. And then the third is if somebody is attacking you, and that is another enemy, and you are physically trying to save yourself, that is also a jihad. So literally it means struggle, but for the word fighting, particularly the Quran used the word qital. All those verses that were revealed when Prophet Muhammad and Muslims were under attack and they have to fight back is qatilu fi sabilillah. Fight for the sake of God, not jahidu. So jahidu is a different concept. Qatilu is a different word. And there is a very, very interesting question, if you allow me, that many people ask, Quran is supposed to be a divine scripture. Why it has verses about fighting? It should not be like this. Well, when you don't have principles of fighting, then you go to extreme when you don't like somebody. So war is a necessity of life. There is not a single country in the world that does not have army. Why? Because you need it. Now, you need, if this is something so common that everybody needs, you need to have rules. So there are rules for war, for fighting. And that's why the Quran explains. So for example, when you are fighting, you cannot kill women, you cannot kill children, you cannot cut crops, you cannot demolish buildings, you cannot disturb worshipping people in churches and synagogues and temples. So these are the rules of fighting. So when you have rules of fighting, and fighting is their necessity in life, then it helps. And that is the reason that Quran has. In Christianity, this has been an issue because in the beginning there was no concept of war, but then there came the concept of just war, and then the holy war, and then that because it was a necessity which eventually has to be brought up in the religion. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam, for sharing that illuminating our understanding.
I assume myself I'm in the class in the university.
About my name, it was given. Our names are given to us by the president of the order at the time of ordination.
Carrie, did you want to comment on the story of the missionary?
Oh, that's right. Yes, there is this understanding for some Christians that they need to go to the ends of the earth. That comes from Scripture. But you're absolutely right, because if you just look in your own neighborhood, you're going to find people who are hungry and who need healthcare and who need all of these services. People who do not, even if they nominally say they're Christian, they have no idea what that means. They don't worship. They have none of that. They've not worked towards inner peace, none of that. So truly our own neighborhoods should be our primary mission field.
Agreed. Yes.
I just wanted to ask if our Sikh brothers might have anything to say about fighting or battle, because I know that Sikhs, they have to carry a weapon, right? They're supposed to carry a weapon, and you have it. Yes, I thought so.
And we would love to hear your answer. And can we hear you speak? I know your voice is a little hoarse, but some Punjabi, and then if you could translate what he says.
Yeah, go ahead. Don't be frightened. Here, we'll give you a microphone.
You want to say?
Boliye.
Yeah, speak in Punjabi, and then he can translate.
Boliye.
A small tiger. कृपान 10वें गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी ने दी है, उससे पहले नहीं थी, उससे पहले थी, लेकिन इसको पूरा कृपान का दर्जा नहीं, तलवार बोलते थे, तलवार। गुरु गोविंद सिंह जी ने जब अमृत सिखाया, एक नाम दिया सिंह और कौर। सिंह नाम जेंट्स में, लेडीज में कौर। जैसे मेरा नाम अकाल सिंह, मेरी वाइफ का नाम नरेंद्र कौर। तब ये कृपान दी अपने प्रोटेक्शन के लिए, किसी को काटने मारने के लिए नहीं, अपनी प्रोटेक्शन के लिए। अगर आपके ऊपर कोई हमला करते फिर यूज कर सकते हैं, वैसे नहीं, किसी को डराने के लिए भी नहीं। ये 5 चीजें दी हमने, और 5 का से शुरू होती हैं। कंधा, कुंभ, केश, कड़ा, कृपान, एंड कशहरा मीन्स अंडरवियर। अंडरवियर इन कशहरा। ये 5 का से शुरू होते हैं। तो हर सिख को जो अमृत छकता है, उसको हर वक्त अपने पास रखे। मेरी आवाज ऐसी, आपको समझ आया कुछ?
हिंदी बोलने वाले समझ लेंगे, but there are a lot of other people that won't understand.
Thank you.
So he said when the Sikh religion was formed, it was formed by the 10th Guru. There were 10 Gurus in total, and it started with Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And so what happened is that Guru Nanak Dev Ji traveled the world, and he was talking about God realization, nirvana, and moksha, and everything. And somewhere along the line, Mughal invasion happened in India, and the sixth Guru, Guru Har Gobind Singh Ji, Guru Har Gobind Ji, he was not the Singh then, because the Sikh religion hadn't formed by then, by the 10th Guru. So his father was assassinated by one of the Mughal emperors. So he decided that there has to be, I mean, both the ideologies should have to be in parallel. One being spirituality, the second being politics, or fighting the evil. The concept of Miri Piri started from then, where he would keep 2 daggers, one being for the grace of God or for in remembrance of God, the other one being to fight evil. So when the 10th Guru, coming back to what he said, so when the 10th Guru, when he actually formed, or rather he formalized this whole, when both the ideas were combined of spirituality and also righteousness, It was the Sikh tradition or the Sikh religion was formed to where he called for 5 individuals who would dedicate their lives towards the upkeep of the social, a certain social structure or peace in the society, where anything evil would be eradicated and you would fight for justice. That is where the significance of the kirpan, the dagger, where every Sikh would carry one as a form of self-protection, and also to if someone is doing wrong, it's more it symbolizes that it's not like you can really scare someone or do something criminal with it. And then the 5 kakas that he mentioned was they all start with the word K and the alphabet K. The first one being
Here.
case, which is they would not shave because it symbolizes the will of God, where God intends you to be like that. So you would not. Yeah. So and also the all the deities, if you notice in the Hindu tradition, also they all had kesh. Like they would really not go to the barber, and dari also they would not go to the barber or like that. So that was one idea, and the second one being a kanga, which is self-grooming to keep yourself in a certain, like just keep yourself well-groomed. The third one being kada, which is also it symbolizes kada ka significance. Kya hoga? It's again it symbolizes it's more of a symbol towards someone being God-fearing or being in the will of God, and it's more of a sign for that, that I'm always in his grace, or rather in his word or in his will. And then the kirpan, of course, which means to fight for the good, and someone was, because when the Mughals came in, they were really torturing the local people. They were wanting people to follow a certain religion or a certain way of living, and they were saying that these gurus they're kind of misguiding these people, they're misguiding our people, and they kind of started killing and assassinating and torturing the local people. So that is why this whole thing came in. And then the fifth one being kachera, which is the underwear, which actually signifies controlling your sexual desires and in a way being truthful to one partner, which is your wife, which is not just for integrity of personality and character. That's what it signifies.
Thank you. Mohammed.
I'm sorry, Kim. I want to request that if there are any more questions towards me, because I have to leave.
Yes.
I have to be at another event.
One more.
Abrahamic religion. So, as an Abrahamic religion, start with the Jewish the first, because Jewish is a traditional, tribal religion. They usually say our God is the real God, and the other Babylonian is not a true God, and all we know that they're trial. They don't have a missionary to go approach all over the world to capture the members and other things. But when Christianity and the Islam religion come, they took the same part by interpreting different way so they can start preaching the missionary work. So what is the causes for them to do it? I know missionary is always good. I've seen in my, as a engineering career, if you're a marketing guy, you have to do, even it is the wrong things you are selling, which supposed not to be bought by the customer, but you'll tell the good things, then customer will buy it. And it works very well in America always, marketing. So what is the reason, reason the Muslim or even the Buddhists, they practice, but they never convert people, I have seen. But where the missionary religion for like Christianity and Islam, converting most of the world, their culture destroyed, their all those stuff destroyed. Why it is happening to them? As we know, Jews, they do not preach, they do not convert. Only someone comes to them, they want to be converted, forcibly probably someone will do, but that's rare. I see the Jews now maybe 9 million or less than 9 million now in the world. But what causes, what motivates Christianity or the Islam to go preach?
That's a big question.
Well, very interesting question. I want to mention, before I answer that question, you mentioned about culture, that scripturally, religion of Islam does not have a culture. It depends on where the Muslims are living. So you see that the Muslims of India, Muslims of Turkey, Muslims of Balkans, or the Muslims of Africa, everybody has their own culture. And sometimes, like, we are not aware of the culture of another Muslim country. So culturally, it's not something that Islam has its own culture. The theology in Islam is that God created all this universe and human beings, and then he sent his messengers to guide the humanity. And every time a prophet came, he has a scripture, and then he's preaching, and then after that another prophet came and he started preaching. And according to the Muslim theology, every religion in the world is divine religion, because the Quran says that there's not a single nation that we did not send a message. So very well-known Islamic scholar, I don't know if you have heard his name, Sayyid Maududi from Pakistan. He is of the opinion that Buddha was a messenger of God, a Nabi, and then Zoroaster was a prophet. So this is how that now every time a prophet comes, he comes for a, as you mentioned, maybe in the olden times for a certain tribe or for certain people. And then when that prophet is gone, then another prophet comes. And the one scripture is of that time, then comes another scripture, which is little bit updated for the other people. So that is what is the theology of Islam is. And Prophet Muhammad is coming from the same series, and the message of the Prophet Muhammad is basically is the same, like what the message of Jesus was, Moses was, Abraham was, and all other prophets that they came in different parts of the world. And since Prophet Muhammad came in the 6th century, and the message that he brought, according to the Islamic theology, was the final message. And in the message, God said that you convey this message to the whole mankind. And that's what Prophet Muhammad started doing, and then his followers. And that was basically the idea, that wherever you go, you, and I guess the same was with the Christianity, that everybody gets salvation, or everybody get to the to get to the God or get to the paradise. That is the spirit behind it, not anything else.
Yes, and it's basically the same in Christianity. There is a scripture that says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations," and that's where that attitude comes from.
Well, thank you. I think we want to respect everyone's time, and we know you need to be somewhere. I'll let Swapna close us out, and thank you so much.
I would like to request that we, before we do that, we take a moment of silence together, just maybe 1 minute, and then if it would be all right with you, we could chant the word peace in Arabic and Hebrew and Sanskrit and English as something that we all want and all appreciate. I invite you to join me in chanting Salam, Shalom, Shanti, peace. Salam, Shalom, Shanti, peace. One more time. Salam, Shalom, Shanti, peace.
Thank you, Maharaj. So, on behalf of the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston, I'd like to thank every one of you who is here today, who took some time off today to come and share this wonderful experience that we all had this evening. And we are extremely grateful to Reverend De Leon, to Imam Haq, to Bhai Akal Singh Ji and his son-in-law, Mr. Sharma, and last but not the least, Swami Mahayogananda Ji, who has been, he is actually a resident monk of the Hollywood Center in Los Angeles. And he has been lent to us by the president of this order, who's the head of this Hollywood Center, for performing the worship and to participate here. So thank you very much. And we have to thank Swami Sarvadevananda Ji for you to come. And so we are very thankful that you all, though you spoke of the same subject, but you shared your thoughts in the different routes that we all take in our lives to come to that. And we used to have an interfaith dialogue over here for years. We started in 2012, but we stopped in just before COVID. And so COVID took away a lot of things. So we hope that this, this revival this year has a long future for it to continue again. And of course, we sincerely thank Interfaith Ministries and definitely to Kim for she took a lot of trouble for us. I came to her at the very last minute because I was having a little tough time in getting speakers. And I said, please, can you help? And so she was very helpful. Thank you so much. And we hope that, Vedanta Society can continue partnering with Interfaith in future programs also. Thank you very much.
Books.
Yes, I'm coming. So now, on behalf of Vedanta Society, we would like to, give a little gift. Which Swami, can you come out, and would you like to?